If you don't hear that, then there's a problem. Okay, so we'll start with Refuge and Bodhicitta. What's the page numbers by now? Page 14. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create by listening to the Dharma, may I become Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So then, setting a most profound Mahayana motivation, as according to our Refuge and Bodhicitta, that here we are, prepared to engage in listening to the teachings, contemplating, and actually meditating, seeing that's our topic on how to meditate, to attain these higher wisdoms, the benefit of myself and my own practice and understanding, and the benefit of extending that out hand and heart to all beings as much as I can. Okay, good to see everyone. So I have quite a few more people back in the room. It's lovely. And so today, I think last time we had the sheet on the 9 stages of meditation, or at least distributed that. So I wanted to go today in detail through these 9 stages of shamatha practice. And then, as I said, we'll also do some meditation on that basis and have some discussion about that. Are there any spare sheets? Yes, there are. Oh, it's one here right now. Yep, there are spare sheets. Liz, I don't know. I think they got emailed. I think you should have, right? Okay, I think so, yeah. Okay, doc. So these 9 stages of meditation, also in the readings that you have for this topic, there's an article by Venerable Refuge, and it's very easily and succinctly going through these 9 stages of calm abiding. Venerable Rene, I think maybe not long after he ordained, Lama Zopa Rinpoche sent him on to do retreat, and so that, without being able to say what he's attained over all these years, he's certainly, shall we say, very authoritative from the side of experience on unpacking these stages of, we talk about shamatha. So these are these 9 stages that lead to that, which is, we could say that's number 10, after these 9. But it's really, I find this particular table, I don't know if I find it again, really, really helpful to lay out in accessible way, all the advice on attaining and working towards attaining shamatha, particularly as laid out in Pabonka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, and in the 3rd chapter of the Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the path to enlightenment. Of course, Kamala Shila's stages of meditation, sort of more based on that. So many different references, but to actually have it in a chart form, a table form, I find very useful for my mind. So I hope you find it useful for yours as well. So when we talk about shamatha, it's also referred to as, we could say, well, literally calm abiding, getting the mind calm and abiding there, staying there, single point of concentration. Also referred to as tranquility, and Pabonka Rinpoche uses the term quiescence or mental quiescence. And I quite like that. It's quite a nice, lovely term. And Lama Tsongkhapa uses the term mental serenity. So it all means the same thing. But just, you know, it's a sort of extraordinary state that's endowed with great stability, the ability to focus for as long as you want without distraction, and great clarity of mind on whatever object you're focusing on, meditating on, so forth. Okay, so it's quite relevant when we, you know, recite that Refuge and Bodhicitta. It says the benefit I get from listening to the Dharma, because in that, in fact, is how we start out. Here we are, learning the instructions, learning about meditation, learning about the conducive conditions for meditation, setting our posture, setting our meditation, saying, hey, now I'm ready to go. So let's go for it. And, you know, we might start out, say, meditating for 10 minutes and thinking of, you know, I'm going to hold the Buddha's image in mind, focus for 10 minutes, or I'm going to pay attention to the breath for 10 minutes. And then as soon as we sit down, we go, oh gosh, there's a mess in there, isn't it? Got a lot to deal with. But that's good. That's the first stage. Because there's a lot of people in the world who don't turn the intention inwards and wouldn't know it's a mess in there. Right? That's probably, yeah, quite a lot of people. I won't necessarily say it's most people, because I don't know what percentage of the population has any sort of meditation practice at all or has ever had. And so what we realize that we hardly ever can stay focused on the object. So we're talking about here in meditation, but if we take that into all our interactions in daily life, it's like, how much attention am I paying to what's going on around me, or my interactions with people, or the world around me, and so forth? Like, how much of the time? And in fact, it's really good to take that into our practice and to cultivate that mindfulness that really looks and sees how much attention am I paying in any moment. Okay, so at this first stage, that's where we're at, you know, and then during the whole session, we're reminding us, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to be watching the breath, or I'm supposed to be focusing on the Buddha image. That's right, that's what I'm here doing. What am I doing? Oh, that's right. Or maybe after 20 minutes when the bell goes, you go, oh, whoops.
Oh, thank goodness.
Or whatever, yeah. You know, so the mind goes all over the place. You know, and so we do nonetheless, from time to time, we're able to focus on the object. So this is called directed attention, or directed placement, or placing the mind. I quite like, Lama Tsongkhapa says, placing the mind. I like that idea. It's sort of like putting the mind on the object, you know, here, pay attention. And the way we do this is how we engage, because we're starting out in the practice, is by getting the instructions. So that, as I mentioned previously, I think that Geshe Kosang Wongmo, the German Geshe Ma, female Geshe, and she said that, you know, when she went to Dharamsala first as a teenager, and then she wanted to stay and go and meditate, and then she realized, oh, I don't have any instructions, I've got to get the instructions first. Hence she studied the whole Geshe degree, but doesn't mean you have to study a whole Geshe degree to start meditating, okay, as you know. So, but nonetheless, we hear the instruction, we listen to the instruction, we listen to how do I set a motivation, how do I set my session, and so forth, what do I do? And then, you know, what do I do when problems come along? We looked at hindrances to our practice and so forth. And so then we follow the instruction. We learn the instruction, we follow the instruction. It could be by, you know, being given verbal instruction by a meditation teacher. It could be by, you know, reading the instructions in any one of these texts or so forth. And then we, you know, it's good once we have that to also go over that in our mind, even when we're not meditating, to be able to pepper the day with moments of focusing on the mind, you know. So what problems persist at this stage? there's no attentional continuity on the object. So most of the time you're not focusing on the object. So if you feel that's your experience, you are at stage 1. So just to know where we're at, stage 1. And it may not be, even though these are set out in some sort of neat sequential order, which is in fact the order in which we experience that as our main experience, right? So we might say, well, sometimes it's like that, but sometimes I'm better than that. So that's true. But we want to get to a point where, okay, this is like, if I look at every session I have, I'm definitely at this level, you know. Occasionally we will have more and more of the other qualities that are at subsequent stages. And so there's no real attention, continuous attention on the object. And the sort of challenges we have, the sort of hindrances we have, or it's called attentional imbalance, because we haven't brought our mind, we haven't trained our mind, it's out of control, is this coarse excitation. So this is the chatterbox mind, if we like, the mind that is constantly, it's got all the explanations down below, this sort of first manifest level of excitation. Attention completely disengages most of the time from the meditation object. We're distracted, easily distracted. There might be sounds or smells, or, you know, our senses are engaged, even though we're trying to stay focused on the breath, focused in our bodies, and, you know, something comes along, or the internal distractions of all the mental activity. As the woman who came along to meditation for the first time said, I never knew I had so many thoughts going on in there. Good to know, good to know. So that's level 1. And so at this level, and indeed at the next level, we need a sort of tight focused attention. So this is the type of effort or mental engagement we have to apply, a tight focus. Now, the Buddha said we have to find a balance between being too tight and too slack in our mind. He said it's like when you're playing a stringed instrument. If the strings are too tight, it's squeaky, and if they're too loose, you can't play music. So we want it sort of balanced, but we do need more effort, more sort of focus on the attention side, on the, you know, because what we're wanting to develop is attention on the object. So we can find the object. When we say find the object means, you know, when you're instructed, pay attention to your breath, we go, okay, yep. And that happens, and then it goes away, and so forth and so forth. So we have no problem finding the object, right? So our mind isn't so caught up that we can't focus at all on the object. You know, I was talking to someone yesterday, and they were saying they were having a conversation with someone, and she said, he didn't hear a word I said. It's that sort of thing. Nothing goes in. But here, something goes in, right? And the quality of your experience, how you experience the meditation, is most of the time the mind is moving. So to develop shamatha, we don't want the mind moving. We want it to stay put. We want it to stay placed on the object. But this is our experience, this level and the subsequent level. And involuntary thoughts come, you'll see, flow of involuntary thoughts, like a cascading waterfall. So this is for the first 3 stages. So while it is for the first 3 stages, you could say that cascading waterfall maybe gets a bit less cascading, a bit smoother, you know, a bit less splashy, a bit less torrential. But nonetheless, it is this constant experience. It's useful to look at these in the context of, you know, we think, oh, I've got to sit and meditate and my mind will be still. That comes along at level 8. It doesn't mean you never experience any stillness in the meditation, because if you never experienced any of that or believed it was possible, you'd give up, wouldn't you? You just wouldn't do it. You just think it's never going to happen, you know. But you know, we get little tasters, and then they go by, elude us, and so forth. So in this one, the whole of our mind, whole of our sessions spent basically bringing our attention back again and again to the object of meditation. We do that without criticizing, judging, even better, just delighting that we notice that it went somewhere else and bringing it back and bringing it back. And it doesn't matter, 50 times in 10 minutes, it's fine. This is training our mind. We can't go from untrained to trained in no time at all. So this is, we're building up the habit of familiarizing with what we're doing at this level. Okay. And so then the next stage, which is continuous attention, we might think that's a bit of a misnomer. How do you go from no attention to continuous attention? I'll just put a qualifier on that, for up to a minute. But what it is that you do experience some continuity of attention on the breath, on the image of the Buddha, whatever you're meditating on. So it's placement with some level of continuity. So you've made some progress along the way. And, you know, we're able to stay on the object, you know, for a short time before we lose it again. So that's what the continuity is. You know, before we had no continuity, it went straight off the object. But here, we're continuing to bring our mind back again and again and again and again to this. And so if we're talking about a minute, that might be a minute many times throughout your meditation, dependent on the length of your meditation. And I guess for most meditators who say do a morning, evening practice or practice twice a day, this is really the level. It's very hard to go beyond this level, level 2, very difficult to, with, why is that? Because say we even spend an hour a day, maybe we do, you know, half an hour in the morning, half an hour at night or whatever, in the meditation practice. What happens to the other 15 or so hours that you're awake throughout the day? What's happening then? We're getting distracted. We're engaging in things around us. So we need to create some conditions in between sessions, as they say, that are, which we've talked about, that are conducive to cultivating this sort of mental presence, hygiene, so forth, helping us not more agitating our mind. So here we've got, yeah, the attention on the object continuously for up to a minute. And the power by which that's achieved, okay, you've got the instructions and now you think about it. You think about it on the cushion, you apply what you've learned. You think about it during the session. Oh, what do I do when my mind goes away? Okay, yes, I release, relax, bring back. No judgment, no criticism, delight in my practice, etc., you know, whatever's needed. So we're thinking about the practice during the practice, but we're also thinking about the practice at other times, you know, like during the day or whatever. And reading about it. And, you know, you read about it and it attracts you to the practice because you read about the benefits and so forth. Even, you know, a lot of people not necessarily look at it in terms of benefits in a spiritual practice, but might say, oh, it's good for my physical health, it's good for the mental health and so forth. So we of course are inspired by that, but then also in terms of engaging in a spiritual practice, to be able to focus our attention more so that even when we're studying other topics, even when we're doing other practices, you know, doing prayers and practices, and that we're not forgetting what we're focusing on. Very, very helpful, right? So again, most of the time, we're not on, our attention isn't on the object most of the time. We're still challenged by this coarse excitation, which completely loses the object quite frequently. And again, having this tight, focused attention without, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, don't squeeze the mind. You know, I always think it's like, we often emphasize when you're sitting to check that you're not furrowing the brow, to concentrate, because we hear concentration, we think that, particularly if you're short-sighted like me, it's like, oh, that's how I've got to concentrate. But no, doing that does not help. In fact, it's counterproductive. And with our mind too, it's a sort of funny thing that our mind needs to be spacious and yet finally focused on the object, where it's not narrowing our attention, but it's strengthening it. It's making it a powerful attention. Still, our mind's moving around all over the shop, still voluntary thoughts like a cascading waterfall, with some moments in between where we're focused on the object. Okay, so I did say this is the one that these two levels are the ones that we're likely to have as our ground state, shall we say, in cultivating a regular practice. And we of course know all the challenges just in cultivating a regular practice, isn't it? Even doing that has its challenges. And so then the third state, resurgent or patch-like placement, is that you're able to, stay on the object for quite a lot longer. And from time to time we lose it, but we're getting familiar with the practice, we're getting familiar with when we are losing it, and as soon as we lose the object, we're aware of that and able to return the mind back. In other words, we patch up the holes in our attention. So this is why it's called patch-like or resurgent, with putting more effort in again. So we have swift recovery of our distracted attention, mostly on the object. And this, and the next stage, the main power that we apply is mindfulness, having overcome the opposite, the forgetfulness of the object, that we're mostly on the object. So we're doing this through the power of mindfulness. And I wanted to read just, this is a delicious quote from the Buddha about mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness on breathing. Just as in the last month of a hot season, it's sort of now, isn't it? Tell me we are in the last month of the hot season, please. When a mass of dust and dirt has swelled up, a great rain cloud out of season dispels it and quells it on the spot. So too, concentration by mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, is peaceful and sublime, an ambrosial dwelling, and it disperses and quells on the spot unwholesome states wherever they arise. Isn't that just exquisite? Just to contemplate that, the benefits. And it's saying it quells the unwholesome state. So it's quite interesting to see, even focusing on the breath, the unwholesome states, the negative states of mind, because they're not in our nature, will pacify, will calm down. We haven't yet applied antidotes to say, okay, I've got to cultivate the opposite. Simply by calming the mind, it returns more and more as you go along to its natural state, which is a state of purity and clarity and stability and great power. So it's interesting. We can note so when we talk about mindfulness, even though it's neither virtuous nor non-virtuous, but in terms of our practice, we talk about it as applying a virtuous state of mind, because we set our motivation at the beginning. We're engaging in this for benefit of ourselves, to benefit others, to be more present, to be more engaged, to be more mindful of others, etc., etc. So that makes it virtuous. Okay. So we still forget the object entirely for brief periods. We still have that coarse manifest level of excitation. So you can see how long this endures, this chatterbox mind. It takes a lot to train that mind, because we do just see when you meditate. Like I was one place where I was living in Sydney in a terrace house, and the house next door, which wasn't the attached bit, was being renovated, and they had a guy there sort of quasi squatting, I think. But I mean, he was there to protect the building while it was all being renovated. We're talking Sydney, we're talking Newtown. I always knew when the builders were going to come in the morning and do something, because he'd get out there with the vacuum cleaner quite late at night, just sitting down to do meditation. And how much would my mind be distracted out the window to next door? Because, you know, there were no windows or doors next door. And the houses are quite close, the terrace houses in Sydney. So it was a very good challenge for my mind. So, I mean, if you want the challenge, go for it. But, you know, maybe at the beginning, we want to minimize, as we've talked about, the challenges, and you can always test yourself out from time to time. Like when we had a meditation sit-in at Victoria Park, 500 people meditating in Victoria Park on the weekend when people are walking their dogs. Because some people walking their dogs will come up and going, oh, what are you doing? Are you meditating? Can I join you? Yes, sit down. No, we knew it was going to be challenging. You know, it's a busy, busy intersection. If anyone knows Victoria Park, it's sort of Broadway, City Road, its main intersection. So that was interesting, right? Not much continuity of attention. Yeah, so, all right, so we're at stage 3. And so here we've moved from needing that tight focus to having a mental engagement that is interrupted. It's not yet uninterrupted, and that for quite, you know, a lot of more levels, it stays interrupted in that, you know, we're not able to stay with the object, but we're not having to so tightly focus. So the effort to engage here is less. Okay. And then in these subsequent stages, our sessions are longer. We can stay focused for, say, an hour, around about an hour. So there's progress happening. We get a sense of achievement and accomplishment. And instead of this cascading waterfall, it's now a little bit more subtle. Involuntary thoughts are like a river quickly flowing through a gorge. So it's no longer this torrent, but it's still, you know, winding around. And often we use that imagery to say, sit on the, you know, bank of the river and observe that torrent going by, but don't get caught up in it. Don't jump in and swim down the river with your thought of your stream of consciousness. You know, just observe it from the side. This is the quality of introspection that stays disengaged, and that comes along. Okay, so stage 4, we have a much more enhanced level of mindfulness, so it gets better and better and better. And, you know, we have much greater stability. You no longer completely forget the chosen object. So it's like, instead of the object being on the periphery and from time to time we remember it, now it is in the center and the distractions are at the periphery. So your experience has changed. And so, yeah, a lot more stability. And at this stage, the danger is having some complacency about concentration, in some ways because you have this sense of achievement and accomplishment. And then you might think, oh, I'm there. You might think that, right? And because you've eliminated the coarse, you know, distractions, so there's still coarse, so there's medium excitation. So we've made progress. Medium excitation. Involuntary thoughts occupy the center of attention while the meditative objects, oh no, it is still at the periphery. Sorry about that. Hasn't yet got to the center. So there is medium level, but it's less than it was. But what comes along now is this coarse level of laxity, the dullness, the lack of clarity of the mind. Yes.
So here he starts talking about samadhi.
Samadhi.
Yeah, like he says. some degree of complacency concerning samadhi.
So samadhi is generally translated as single-pointed focused attention. Yeah. So, and that's where it's a challenge, because we hear samadhi, there are different levels of samadhi. So it gets more and more refined, you know, and more stronger, more powerful, more and more refined. We're not yet at, you know, being able to maintain it for as long as we want without distraction by any means. Okay, so thanks for raising that. Because it is true, we hear samadhi and we think, that's it, that's what I'm aiming for. Well, of course you are. There are many different levels of concentration. Okay. Yeah. So, but, you know, this complacency kicks in. And so we're not having this sort of being buffeted around constantly by our thoughts. It's subdued somewhat, but this coarse laxity, this dullness of mind. And what I reckon is that because the excited mind has sort of calmed a bit, then it becomes more obvious that the dullness of the mind is there as well. The lack of clarity of the object, the lack of vivid attention on the object. So say I've got a Buddha image, but it's a bit not clear, right?
You end up with like a non-reactive mind that just lives in the world and not the mind world.
Well, every experience we have is based on the mind. So a non-reactive mind is what we're aiming for. Absolutely. So that's, you know, part of, we would say in this, it's called equanimity, abiding in equanimity. So not being buffeted around. So whether that's by external things or internal things, here is what we're talking about. And so we still have this interrupted, that goes on for all these stages, sense of achievement. We've gone through that. So the fifth stage, which is tamed or controlling attention. So now we're really trained. We're really trained meditators. So we're able to assert more and more control, to pacify the mind, to tame the mind. And here, instead of a complacency or danger of complacency about samadhi, concentration, we're actually delighted in it. We have satisfaction in it. We see the advantages, which means that finally we want to do more and more and more. But we've got to get there. It takes a while, right?
Is that when resistance drops away?
That's when resistance, no resistance to training the attention. Don't we look forward to this? That comes next, yeah. So here we're applying introspection. Of course, we've always been applying introspection, but it's looking at more and more subtle levels of excitation. Because, you know, I think about it like white noise. You don't realize it's there, but then you realize, oh, there's more subtle, well, maybe even white noise is too manifest. But we recognize it as a fault, and we quickly, the introspection's like the quality controller who says, oh, hang on a minute, we've got to adjust. We've got to make an adjustment here. So mindfulness, the one that doesn't forget the object, and introspection that says, oh, the quality of your attention is wavering. So, you know, if we look at, okay, at stage 5, sorry to say, there is still some resistance to samadhi, medium laxity and medium excitation. The medium laxity, so the object appears, but not that clarity. So it's, okay, we're getting better at it. And then stage 6. So what we have to be careful of here, even at stage 5, is that we don't get complacent or relax our efforts, because, you know, we're getting prone to subtle excitation and so forth. There's still work to do, in other words. And here our experience, our involuntary thoughts, are like a river slowly flowing through a valley. So it's no longer this torrent of the river, slowly flowing. I like to think of, meandering around and having a few billabongs where you can pause and actually pay attention. Or it's described that the thoughts, the experience of the thoughts is is flickering. So not grabbing your attention, but flickering like a butterfly in space, and it just sort of vanishes. So it's light. It's not a heaviness. Okay. Because when we also talk about coarse levels of distraction, we can also talk about the body and the aches and the pains and this and that comes along, that distracts our attention. And that gets less and less and less as well. Okay. And so then when we get to level 7, fully pacified attention, fully pacified, that's where we were hoping we would start. And so thoroughly being able to, it says, to quickly pacify attachment, which is the desire energy based on the senses that just gets distracted here and there. So we're quickly able to nip that in the bud. And melancholy, which is in this context, because the power by which we're engaging now is one of enthusiasm, the opposite mind, which gets dispirited about the practice. So we're able to pacify that quickly. And lethargy, which is that dullness, laxity of mind, or laziness about doing the practice. Oh, do I have to? I mean, this is what challenges at number 1 and number 2. But by here, it's, we've seen the benefits and we're enjoying the practice, realizing that, all these distractions, they're just, you've got to eliminate them. They're just faults, right? So we have subtle imbalance of attention, so quickly recovering. So most of the time, we're just like in the zone. This is how it is. What's missing here is having the intensity to be able to hold the object with clarity. So that we haven't yet nailed. And so here it said, even though we've got level 7, subtle laxity and subtle excitation, it's better to err towards subtle excitation in terms of our awareness, because we're more able to notice that, right? Rather than the subtle laxity, or even any level of laxity, because it feels peaceful. It's like, oh yeah, I'm meditating, this feels good, this feels good. That's a very gross level. That's a very coarse level. So at this 7th level, the sessions we've progressed here easily 2+ hours quality meditation focused on the object. So you can see a lot of progress has come about. And this is through familiarity. We're really familiar with the practice. We know what we're doing. We have confidence about it. We have some power. We have confidence that we're able to do it, which is one of the things that gets in our way. Okay. So Venerable Renee describes it as going from the ordinary mind to the mind where you're abiding in a calm abiding. It's like entering into a tunnel or entering into something. You focus your mind on the object and you go through to get into this, like you're in the tunnel, you're there. You're not there yet, but you're more there. Okay. And so then the next level is this single pointed attention. So you can stay, your single pointed attention, your samadhi is highly developed at this stage. You've made great progress, you've got great enthusiasm. So long and sustained samadhi without any excitation or any laxity. You've completely quelled those, even the subtle laxity. But you still have the latent impulses for that. So it can manifest again, and maybe from time to time. And when it does, it takes very little effort to ward it off. And this is usually done, particularly at the beginning of the session. You apply more effort, and then you don't need so much effort. And at this point is when you experience at last that stillness you were craving for all along, as your ground state, as your main experience at this level. And it's an uninterrupted attention on the object. Now, we're still not at shamatha. We're still working on it, working on it, working on it. And the involuntary thoughts, it says the conceptually discursive mind, chatterbox mind, is calm like an ocean unmoved with waves. So this is another one of those analogies that we use when we're trying to develop particularly stability. Lama Yeshe said, make your mind an ocean. There's a whole text on make your mind an ocean, vast, expansive, but none of the ripples of the agitation of thoughts. We talk about the ripples on the surface, but here your mind is completely calm, like in the depths of the ocean, unmoved, even by waves, let alone ripples. And then the ninth stage, attentional balance. So your mind is now trained, what's called placement with equanimity. This is where the equanimity comes in. So we use these when we were looking previously at the sort of antidotes we apply to hindrances, and we talk about, needing to apply more effort or apply less effort. At this stage, we don't need any effort at all. So this is this mind of equanimity. We're totally familiar with the practice. We're totally familiar with the results. And there may still be some imbalances in the future. So this is where it says the cause for those imbalances are still latent. There's still that potential. So it does remind me of the person I mentioned who did the shamatha project and actually achieved shamatha, but because he didn't have the framework of spiritual practice or virtue, or so, not saying whether he was virtuous or non-virtuous, he didn't have that understanding where it sits in terms of within a spiritual practice, because he didn't have any of that, shall we say, even values, let alone understanding. Then when Alan saw him subsequently at a party, and he'd completely lost that, and he was off his face, and who knows what he was doing. But so it's even achieving it doesn't mean that you've got it forever. If we're not continuing to cultivate it, right? So even it gets easier, and it gets easier. Maybe if you've developed a regular practice, you might notice that it gets easier to settle into the meditation. It's like your body knows what it's doing, the mind knows what it's doing. Oh yes, now we're going to meditate. Whereas at first it is, what are you doing with me? All sorts of other things come up, but it gets easier and easier. You get more and more familiar. This is the benefit of having a routine. Okay. So here we are at stage 9 and effortless. So here you can stay single-pointed concentration for 4 hours, no problem. That's a long time. That's a long time. And the actual, how it's described by meditators, the quality of that is so sublime, they call it perfection, perfection. So there's a certain, this is what gives rise to physical and mental pliancy or bliss, you know. So there's a physical pliancy, experience of bliss. So your aches and pains do not bother you at all. In fact, it's quite a joyous experience, one to look forward to. Really look forward to that. And then from that mental pliancy, where you can apply your mind to whatever you want for as long as you want, engage in virtue, and your mind always has great enthusiasm for virtue. You never lose enthusiasm for doing something positive. Right? It doesn't wane at all. So here you can see your mind's become much more subtle, much more purified. And we haven't yet even, we've applied a lot of antidotes and we've applied a lot of effort to engage in this. Yeah. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can ask a question.
So if we go back to this idea that this person that you're talking about, he achieved
Yes.
samadhi and then it dissipated.
Yes.
So my question is a bit like, you're saying these first three stages are really only possible
In a day-to-day practice,
Yeah.
say, yeah.
So I suppose I'm saying, what do we have to do to get to the other ones? And if you ever get there, how do you sustain it? Are you sort of, what's that life like?
Okay. So, yeah, that's a good question. How do you get there and what's the life like? How do you sustain it so you don't end up like him, right? So
Yeah,
he
because-
did I think 6-month retreat. So what was interesting was that to be able to attain it in 6 months is quite an achievement, because these days, often it's said, I know one of the nuns at Chenrezig Institute, and she was 2 years in retreat with all the conducive conditions, but then she went to the centre in Kangaroo Island because she said the distraction was because her son would do all her shopping and do all of this, and she found it very difficult not to engage with him at those times. So she went for a year down to Kangaroo Island, to Daytongling, and then she is now back at Chenrezig Institute, I think another 2 years in, or I've lost count. I don't know what her practices are now, but now it's okay for her. I mean, her son's not around there now either, which it probably helps, but in terms of even when we've had to engage, like she had to do the census and that, you just sort of hardly have a conversation. So, but she's okay with that too. But she's spending most of her time in full-time retreat. Well, all of her time actually in full-time retreat. Now, to actually go beyond stage 3, yes, you do need to be in retreat. You can't do it with our day-to-day engagements because there's too much of the time yanking us into other things to really progress beyond that. So we really, this is why people go into long retreat, whether that's for a year or 2 or whatever, depends on the individual and where their practice is up to, and what condition, you know, so many things, whatever, you know, they say don't have any busyness in your life, you know. So, and we start to think, when is that going to happen? And the only way it's ever going to happen is if we create the situation for that to happen. So having said that, even though we can't, well, you might say, I don't think I can commit my life to retreat or a couple of years to retreat. I mean, if anyone is in that situation, please do. I mean, I was reading about some of the young people, even someone met who from a young age went into long retreat, right? That's quite amazing. I was just reading the other day, I got a sort of news feed, and who are doing long-term retreat. But even you plan to do that, all these sort of obstacles can come along, like COVID happened and I was going to do it overseas, or, you know, all sorts of things we weren't expecting can come along and distract us from that. But then the second part of your question about once you do attain that, how do you maintain that, is as much as possible throughout the day, spend big chunks of time in meditation practice. And I'm saying that on the basis of observing at least one teacher who His Holiness indicated had achieved this. And so who's, yes, busy, but spends almost, actually I can think of another teacher who spends all their spare time in meditation. When they're not teaching, when they're not doing other things, they spend all their time in meditation. So that would be how you maintain that on an ongoing basis. Yeah, but first of all, it needs the retreat. Yeah.
So is the idea that you've got this stability that you can kind of go in and out of, and is the whole thing about, again, also about purification by being in those states of consciousness?
Yes, because the other thing that you do after this, and we'll be looking next week at the analytical side of meditation, that once this is to make your mind serviceable, to be able to really have a very powerful laser-like concentration for analytical meditation, so that then we apply that in all the stages of path on the Lam Rim, which, you know, that we'll be covering in subsequent modules. And then particularly the most refined state of special insight of wisdom realizing emptiness of reality, to really, but for that we need a very, very powerful mind in the first place. And then you go to the point of union of that, of calm abiding and special insight, and that you're no longer alternating and you're in the zone of, like, they're both in one mind arising at the same time. So it's a long way down the track. For myself, I can't say who here's an, you know, an aha, but I can say I'm not. Yes.
Like I get incessant anxieties.
Yes.
Sometimes when I'm early in the morning, it just comes rushing up through my body. When I'm exercising and all that comes up, I think a lot of some of it is from my lived life, but I think a lot of it might also come from my ancestors. So how do I be able to detach from that and let it go?
Practice, practice, practice like this. So
when it comes up when I'm meditating, what do I do?
Best to notice it at a point where, as early as possible. In other words, before it's hijacked your whole mind. So
not just the mind,
the body as well. The body as well. And so we can have all sorts of physical experiences in meditation as well, but it's, yeah, just like anything external to us, anything that's a distraction, what do? We relax. So we breathe out, relax, release that distraction, release it, release it, release it. Return your attention to the breath. If you're already too far gone, you might need to take a break and go and do some physical exercise, come back and try again. Keep it short, because we want quality over quantity. At the beginning, we want quality over quantity. At this stage, you know, people are meditating for 10, 11, 12 hours, taking a break for pipi, have something to eat, so forth, sleep, whatever, get back on the cushion. Yeah. So here again, we have this image that the mind is still like Mount Meru, the king of mountains. And this is indeed another analogy that we use to, when you set your posture, make your body still like a mountain. We say that. So it's like we're cultivating the imprints where that actually becomes an experience, right? Actually becomes our experience. So that's what we're going to get to. Okay. So, well, what we want to get to is the next stage, is stage 10, which is actual shamatha. And it's said that when you first attain that, the experience is like a pressure on top of your head, like could be light, could be heavy on top of your head. And then we all sit there going, oh, can I feel a heavy? Can I feel something on top of my head? We're so open to suggestion. It's nothing unpleasant. It's just this sort of slight pressure. And you're free of all mental imbalances and so forth. It's said to be this sort of freedom of your mind is like nothing you've ever experienced before. So it's quite blissful. And it's quite this mind of equanimity, not reactive mind, quite a powerful mind. And you feel your mind feels very fit, very supple. And one of the things when I was doing the Cultivating Emotional Balance teacher training was that, they talk about the fact that generally what we regard as a balanced mind in Western psychology is sort of free of some sort of manifest neuroses or whatever, whereas as presented by the Buddha, as presented by what capable, it's this exquisite, unbelievable states of mind, positive, virtuous, powerful states of mind, which are way beyond what Western psychology looks at generally. The universe does, yeah. The universe, yeah.
This thing about pulsating, I'm on a low level of meditation, but I sometimes feel the pulsating energy in here.
Yeah, you just don't pay attention to it. Just when we're meditating, if you're focusing on the breath, focus on the breath. If you're focusing on a Buddha image, focus on that. Any other experience that comes along in our mind or in our body is a distraction. So you just don't focus attention on it. And I mean, I had that towards the beginning, early in my practice, some sort of physical, vibrations and whatever. They go away over time. They go away over time.
Is that the energy moving after the clearance? Is it?
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? We just have these things that happen. Sometimes people feel so light that they think they've disappeared. If you don't feel a sort of certain tension in your body, it's just like, am I still here? Yes, you're still here. Okay. So we have all sorts of experiences and our mind can get very carried away with those. So this is the undisciplined mind. And so we just train ourselves little by little to just not not try and look for meaning in those experiences and just let them go. Just let them go. Even the experience of, oh, I was there for 5 minutes, yay. And then the next time you sit down, you're only going to be frustrated looking for that 5 minutes of single pointed concentration. So forget about it. Just each time, start afresh, start afresh, start afresh. Okay, so having presented this, I thought what we could do is just now have I'll guide you through 1 minute of single pointed concentration. That's what we're aiming for. And then we can discuss what you notice coming up in terms of what level you think you're at. What did you notice? Was it coarse excitation? Was it a torrent of thoughts? Was it peace, stillness? Just whatever your experience is. Okay, so set yourself in conducive posture. Of course, having said 1 minute, I'm going to have to. So bring your awareness into the space of the body. I'll ding at the beginning of the minute and ding at the end. But, settle just down, apply all the instructions right now. I haven't dinged yet. Okay, relax. So that was 1 minute. Might have felt short, might have felt long. It's all relative. But I just invite you now to maybe get together with a couple of, just 1 or 2 others, maybe 2 at least, and just discuss what did you notice in terms of what we've presented here, or what your experience was in that meditation. And if those of you online want to discuss with each other, I'm just going to stop the recording for a few minutes. Okay, so I think we're all back together now. Okay, so is there anybody who would like to either raise some qualms, questions, or share your observations from that discussion? Yes, Evan.
Distinction when you're looking to form a mind that's looking at your object of concentration. Is there a distinction between your engagement with that object of concentration and a more subtle mind that's watching that mind and watching the thoughts come and go?
Okay, so is there a distinction between the mind watching the object of meditation, or engaging the object of meditation rather than watching, engaging the object of meditation, and the one that's watching that mind? So the one watching that mind is this factor we call introspection. It's a mental factor that observes to see, in particular, that the quality of that engagement of that mind with the object and helping to reset. So we could say the mind observing the object. So we have these two, the mindfulness, which is not forgetting of the object, but that also is a mental factor. We've got the mind engaging the object, and the mindfulness, we could say, is like an effort that we apply to not forget that. And then the introspection, which is the one watching, it's sort of, sometimes it's said it's like a spy, roving about and just keeping a check on things, quality controller, whatever we want to call that one. So that's the one watching. So it's a factor of the mind. It's not another mind. So we talk about having the main mind in this one, mental consciousness, and all the different other mental factors in its retinue. So in its retinue is those ones active at that time. In this meditation, we'd say mindfulness and introspection in particular. Yeah.
So it would be the introspection then that first acknowledges a thought arising and watches that thought pass through the mind, and then in particular if someone's having maybe some unpleasant thoughts arising, was it the introspection that would acknowledge that as it starts to arise, and then get an understanding of whether they want that thought to continue to arise, or whether that's the point where you say, yeah, all right.
The point where you say, hold on, is introspection jumping in. Yeah. Yeah. So it's keeping a check on things.
You notice it will arise and then you come back and go, oh, I'm off my topic, I'm off my object.
Well, that would be the mindfulness, you know, not forgetting the object because you've recalled the object. Okay.
I could see these thoughts almost fluttering on the periphery while I was focusing.
Yeah, so you're focusing, say, on the breath, and then you saw fluttering on the periphery.
It was like
of the thoughts.
I wasn't kind of going there, but I could kind of sort of notice them. But to me, it wasn't clear. Was I actually engaging with the thought and bringing my mind back?
Well, there's a part of your mind was engaging with the thought, but the main focus was on the object, right? So that's good. That's very good. That's a very good state to be at, right? Where it's not enough that it's distracting you. They're there, but you're not fully engaging them. And so the power, they haven't taken over your mind, hijacked you off onto something else, you know. They haven't taken it over, but they're there. It's like when we hear sounds, but we don't sort of follow like that. We experience sound within the space of the body. Oh, there's a sound, you know. I mean, even we don't say those words, but just it's there, or the thought's there, or something's there. But so the power of your concentration is stronger than that distraction. Yeah.
This time, for the first time, when I'm focusing on the breath in and out, I was aware for the first time of the anxiety as separate from my body and pulsating outside of my body.
Good.
And I'm feeling my heart, less fear in my heart.
Less fear in your heart, yeah.
I think the both fear and anxiety.
Yeah. So now you've got a strategy, right? Because you've had that experience.
What's the strategy?
Well, to when that arises, it's not in here, it's out there.
Oh, that's the first time it's happened with anxiety being pulsating out there.
Good. Progress. Maybe it's the energy of everybody together. Anyone else? Yeah.
In our discussion, I noticed one of us said, "Oh, I am at stage 1," and it made me reread the sheet and notice that there isn't sort of, it said 1 is able to direct attention, but it seems this is not characterizing an individual identification. This is simply what is occurring in the mind.
It is what is occurring in the mind, but we could also check up where am I at in this? Yeah, it's useful to check.
Rather than a label that sticks.
You know, it's fluid.
Inquiry.
It's fluid because next time you do it, it might be, oh, I'm at stage 3 for that one.
Yeah, so rather than a sort of assertion,
it's just
noticing.
It's a noticing. It's totally a noticing. So this is not an exam or anything like that. It's just notice, okay, where is that at right now? And some of the tools that we use, like the counting, the different ways of counting the breath. This is when our mind is distracted, but we want to focus on the breath. So might as well give it something to pay attention to that's at least within the context of what you're doing and not off on some other topic. That's the function of something like counting. And so some people find that useful because over a period of time they say, oh, I can actually stay focused attention and not forget the plot and count to 20 or you know, sometimes it says count to 10 and then, you know, start again. There are so many different ways of counting, but it can be useful. But then by the time you'd get to 20, it would absolutely be a hindrance. And so you should have chucked it out a long time ago because you don't need it anymore. So, yeah. So I think not to get fixated as, oh, this is it, this is where I'm at and that's it, because then we limit ourselves, you know. And as I mentioned at the beginning, even it's set out as a sort of, we progress from one stage to the next. We say, well, if this is my baseline every time, that I'm at least at this every time, then that's my baseline. That is indeed where I'm at. But if your baseline goes up, like I can always guarantee at least a minute, at least a minute, at least a minute, it happens regularly, at least a minute and so forth, then good, you know. So we use it as a tool to help us to see, oh, what is it I've got to do more of or less of right now as I'm developing my practice? And yeah, and not to be frustrated and think I haven't achieved anything because I've got this cascading blah, 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 blah. And we think I haven't really got anywhere. but in fact, we are getting somewhere. Yeah,
And
so
sometimes, I mean, almost by accident, it seems, you can sort of drop down a bit further.
yes,
Where it's much stiller.
we can
And you
often,
think, oh, wow.
yeah, and then that's true. We go, oh, you know, the mind drops, we're into that stillness. And then, oh, wow comes along. Damn, oh, wow.
So it's a bit more, it feels a little bit more like.
It's more fluid. It's more fluid. But that's what I was saying. Even though stillness, it says, as a continuous experience comes at stage 9, as a continuous experience. If we didn't experience any of that, and that's what we're looking for, then would we persist? It's like, oh, here's a taste of what's possible. Here's another taste of what's possible. I always think about it like, eventually I'll get to join the dots together. You know, it won't be just sort of random events. But even before it's joining the dots together, eventually I've got more control, you know, that already comes along quite early. So I've got more control. I'm directing the show. I'm not like, my mind isn't running me for a ride. I'm actually directing the mind.
Yeah, I often feel that it's really, you know, an important thing for me to do in my practice is to try and, before I finish the meditation session, is to just check in and be aware of how it's feeling before I come out of it.
Yeah.
Because I think you can just get into a habit of sitting, you know, for a period of time, and not really notice when you reach some of those more sublime levels in your meditation that you need to be aware of.
Yeah.
You know,
So
it's you know, often it's often like a parallel where you go for a holiday somewhere and you go and visit some place like Venice, and then you're on the plane back home and you sort of think, what did I see while I was there? But I'm surrounded by all this stuff, and did I really notice?
So recalling, recalling the mind state or the experience at the end of meditation session is really, really important. So that it's like we're consolidating the practice, we're consolidating the experience in that time. So say, you know, right at the end, I get that stillness, or I feel like I'm in the zone just as it's ending. And so we consolidate that so that it's like you drench your mind in that experience. We call that, and let it sink in more and more into your awareness, and think, as you're coming out of the meditation, taking time to come out of the meditation with that awareness, with whatever that quality of mindfulness or stillness or delight, whatever it is that you're experiencing. And then as you're coming out of the meditation, you're being aware of the surroundings around you, but you're staying as still as possible in the mind, and then carrying that as much as you can into your, you know, post-session experience. And of course it's going to waver, but you're calling it consciously to mind strengthens it. And then you can then return to that constantly throughout the day, you know, that experience. Oh yeah, what was that experience? Come back to it, come back to it, come back to it, come back to it, just constantly. Even you're not sitting in a meditation posture, you know, even you're just going about your daily activity. It's really, really, that's part of the practice. It's not like, okay, there's what I do on the cushion and then the rest of the life is something else. We want to make it seamless so that we're carrying that into the rest of our life. So the whole of our life, ideally, would become a meditative state.
I find that useful when I think I'm having a bad meditation.
Yes, a so-called bad meditation.
And I get to the end. But then I notice as I get up that I am actually more relaxed and more quiet.
Yes.
Even though I feel like that wasn't so great, you know? So
yes, you can have
as
what.
a way to encourage me, you know, like even though it was I
Well-
felt like that, but look, here I am and I actually feel a bit better.
Yeah, I think there's no such thing as a bad meditation,
You
but we set ourselves all sorts of expectations about what the experience is going to be. And if that experience doesn't happen in that meditation, then we say, oh, I failed, which is, being very self-critical. But as you say, noticing that even that experience wasn't the quality I would have preferred, I did it. I put the routine into place and delight in that. And then, as you say, you notice that you're more quiet, more relaxed. That is the benefit of that session. I'm more quiet, I'm more relaxed. I mean, if the whole world was more quiet and more relaxed, we'd have a very different scenario going on in the world, wouldn't we? So, yeah, that is an achievement from that meditation. So we have to note those and really focus on those because we're quick to judge ourselves. So we have to be very, very careful and very kind with ourselves in what we're doing, okay? And enthuse ourselves constantly in the practice. Yay, team, I meditated today, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, yay, I can, pat myself on the back, whatever, just delight and continue to delight in what you are doing. And then also, and as you say, you notice you were more quiet, more relaxed. And what you also would observe throughout the day, paying attention, less reactive. Sorry, I've forgotten your name. Up the back with the pink hair. Alice, you said about less reactive. And so you notice that. Yeah, so you notice it throughout the day. Oh, I'm not as, they're not pressing my buttons as much as they were or whatever. I'm more relaxed in the traffic or I'm more relaxed in whatever I'm doing. Yeah, so that's very good. Anyone online?
But does it clear the mind the more you practice so that
Yes.
it doesn't recur?
Well, it does keep recurring, as we've just seen, for an awfully long time, but it gets weaker. The more we train our mind, And it just takes a hell of a lot of training, right? And we start to see more benefits, which is why we keep going. And so we're not at the stage where it's like, oh, we're enjoying the practice 24, every time without qualms. Still, we see the benefits. And don't expect others to see the benefits and wait for them to say, oh, you've really changed, because you'll be disappointed. Just note for yourself, because it's our experience that matters, right? All right, so looks like we've run out of time for today. I was hoping to at least outline the meditation on Shakyamuni Buddha, but we've run out of time for that. We will, of course, be doing that at our 2-day retreat. And as I said, next week we'll look at analytical meditation, but it's useful, even you only do 1 minute, but I encourage you to do more than a minute at a time as a daily practice, and observe, and just as we did there, just observe and go, okay, what was going on there? At the end, take stock of your meditation practice and see if you do that day by day, you might notice a constant theme coming up. That's good, because it gives us stuff to work with, and that's what it is. We're going into the laboratory of our mind. Okay, so we'll do our dedications. Thank you, everybody, very much. Page 16, halfway down. Through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception to that enlightened state. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thanks, everybody. Any announcements anyone has? Okay. See you next time.
Thank you.